Okay, guys, welcome to today's directions video. Going through some more notes today, back-to-back note day. This one's just basically looking at these three individuals, and we're going to go through some of their more famous works. So, for example, Leonardo, we're going to look at the Mona Lisa, the Last Supper. For Michelangelo, we're going to look at the sculpture of the Pieta, sculpture of sketch statue of David, and then we're also going to look at his painting on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. And then for Raphael, we're going to look mainly at his at the School of Athens piece uh, for him. All right. So if we kind of go through it, Da Vinci here, again, he's the ideal Renaissance person. He's an artist, a sculptor, an architect, a scientist, an engineer, an inventor. Okay, he does everything. He doesn't pigeonhole himself. That's the ideal Renaissance person, somebody that can do all of the arts, right? He could even advance and become like a poet or a playwright, okay, or something like that, or a writer, anything of those lines. So let's kind of get through here. So one of his best painting, or his most famous painting, is the Last Supper right here. Sorry, got a little interrupted there. So, but yeah, here's the Last Supper by Da Vinci. If you want to write that down, and again, it's just supposed to be what it is, the Last Supper from the Bible, the story in the Bible. So he just kind of depicted it out there. You can kind of take a look. He has all the things that we were talking about yesterday. The geometric setup is fine. He uses linear and horizontal perspective to kind of put the emphasis on the individual that he wants. And this painting is Jesus is the one he's putting the emphasis on. And yeah, that's basically the Last Supper. I mean, we're just kind of going through, looking at some of the pieces here, and just knowing who wrote it. So Last Supper, Da Vinci. And if we kind of keep on going down, we do know that this painting is really old, right? If we're talking about Da Vinci's time, the painting is starting to kind of wear down, and we're starting to kind of lose our classics because of obviously just natural wear and tear on the painting and oxygen on the paint. So you can kind of see here that it looks very crummy. I mean, it just looks really bad compared to what it once was, and that's just going to continue to go on. So it may be a while, but who knows? Maybe the Last Supper, the painting of the Last Supper, eventually goes away. There's also a kind of a sticking point, kind of a you may have, if you ever seen the movie The Da Vinci's Code. They put a lot of emphasis on the Last Supper here. Is this John or Mary Magdalene? And you guys can go on YouTube and just YouTube it real quick, and it kind of does a good job of explaining it. So it's kind of interesting. So if you're interested in this painting and kind of the mystery or kind of the conspiracy behind it, you can just go to YouTube, and I'm sure there's a 2-minute clip or a 3-minute clip about it. Continuing on here, because we gotta roll pretty fast. So far we just got, the only thing we need to write down so far is Da Vinci is the painter of the Last Supper. Again, we get the Vitruvian Man. We'll skip through that. And again, we just want to know that he does everything, right? He's a biologist. You know, he even cuts up dead. He would literally go to the morgue, and he would have like a connection where they would let him take the dead bodies, or he would just work right there in the morgue, and he would cut people open, and just to see how their insides work, and he would jot it down in his notebook. So kind of a lunatic, but also extremely curious if you're going to those links. Again, architect, studied the Central Church. He even did some city planning. If he had to become, you know, like a what do you call it, a civil engineer, he was ready for that. He had a whole plan set out. He was also an inventor, right? He did a whole bunch of things with inventions. A lot of them had to do with flying, as you can see here. But again, you guys can just this will come up more in our video next week. I'm just kind of previewing it here. And again, like he said, really obsessed with flying. He even did siege defenses. We talked about water, so he just does it all, right? In the Renaissance, you got to be able to do it all. And his second most famous art piece is the Mona Lisa. So for Da Vinci, you want to have the Last Supper and the Mona Lisa down. And again, you kind of have all these geometric setups, and here's kind of all these different versions through time of the Mona Lisa. Machiavelli one, Picasso Mona Lisa. Picasso, he's more famous for kind of these kind of outlandish paintings. You kind of get that sense from it there. Andy Warhol, he was more of a artist, but more of a photographer in like, you know, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Some people even think that the Mona Lisa is just, a lot of people say that he based it on his mother or his sister, but then there's also a theory out there that he based it upon himself as a woman, and you kind of can see the translation here. So, just some interesting things to consider. And now you can find all these paintings at the Louvre. And the Louvre is, it's in Paris. It's right next to the Eiffel Tower there. And that's where most of the famous works in history end up. The Louvre. The Louvre is probably the most famous museum in the world. Next guy up, Michelangelo. He represented the body in 3 dimensions of sculpture. So Michelangelo is a big-time sculptor. He's more of a sculptor than a painter. Not saying he can't do both, but he is definitely, his famous works are more sculptures. So like his first one is the sculpture of David right here. And if you guys can just see the veins, and I'm going to bring it up real quick. Oh, you can't see, I think I'm blocking you guys. But you can see the veins in the hands, and just the amount of detail that goes into sculpting something like this. Obviously takes a lot of time, and you can't make any mistakes. That's the one thing with these painters. I think about that a lot. You cannot make any mistakes, otherwise you gotta start over. So for Michelangelo, let's jot down that he was created the sculpture of David, and then here's a 15th century sculpture of David, and then here's what 100 years later looks like. And as you can tell, it's like, you know, it's very, very different. Obviously, the one that's newer, the 16th century one by Michelangelo, much more detail. It's just better, in my opinion. But I'm sure other people think the opposite. Statue David's huge, by the way. These are my high school teachers. I threw them in here because they actually went there and saw these in person and took a bunch of pictures, so it's kind of interesting. And for me, it's kind of funny to look back and laugh. And again, his other one is the sculpture of the Pieta. This one is all in marble. This one's even more impressive than the sculpture of David in my mind. If I bring it in here, you can take a look at some of the details here. You know, the robe, the skin, the bones. Even here where the fingers, I wish I could zoom in, where the fingers are pushing the skin away. I mean, he even shows that inside of the painting, or inside the sculpture. Sorry. So a lot of detail. If you guys haven't had me in class before and you've only had me an online student, my handwriting's terrible. I can't draw or write really. So this artist stuff just blows my mind that people have these capabilities inside of them. So I always give a lot of appreciation to the art, as it's something that I have no shot at doing. All right, so for Michelangelo, we looked at the Pieta and we looked at the statue David. So jot those 2 down for him. Kind of listing everything here. So far, Leonardo, Mona Lisa, Last Supper, Michelangelo, the Pieta, statue David, and now we're going to look at his big art piece, and that's the painting of the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. So you can kind of take a look here of what it is, and this will come up a lot in our video too. This is a big emphasis on it, so I'm kind of highlighting some things here. I think we're going to watch our video tomorrow, if I'm being honest, and you'll be able to get a better sense of it. So with the Sistine Chapel ceiling being so massive, he kind of split it up into different themes, you know, and different areas of the ceiling are themed together. So we have the creation of the heavens as one of the themes. The creation of man is the other one. I think that everyone has kind of seen this image before. It's pretty iconic in art. So the creation of the man section. We have the fall from grace section. And then the last judgment section. Excuse me. And our video will do a good job of explaining it better than I can. I'm not a really big art guy. I just know the basics, but I can't really go into too much detail. So I kind of let other avenues explain for me. Last Supper, again, the Last Judgment, excuse me. Michelangelo. And our last guy is Raphael. Raphael, for us in here, we're just going to kind of skip ahead here and talk about his famous work. For us, we just want to know Raphael. He painted this painting called The School of Athens. All right, so 1 point perspective. All the important Greek philosophers and thinkers are included. All the great personalities of the 7 liberal arts. A great variety of poses located in the Papal Apartment Library. Raphael worked on this commission simultaneously as Michelangelo was doing the Sistine Chapel. All right, so two great artists doing two amazing art projects at the very same time. That's what the Renaissance is about. There's just so much talent and great art being created that, these two classics, like world famous classics throughout history, were being created at the very same time, in the very same place. So it's a very interesting story there. Very doesn't happen a lot in history, so it's important to bring it up. School in Athens is my favorite painting of this whole unit because I just like the idea of a person putting all the great philosophers and thinkers on one paper. So if you make this painting, you know that people respected you. All right. And so we get Da Vinci's on there, Michelangelo's on there, Raphael even throws himself on there. That's got to be a little brash, if you ask me. But sometimes you gotta have some self confidence. So Raphael puts himself up there with some of the greats. Great painters, great thinkers. Here's my high school teachers again. And so you have Plato. He looks to the heavens for the ideal realm, so he's pointing up. Aristotle looks to the earth and the here and now, so he's kind of doing like the now pose. So it's kind of interesting. So he's kind of has them. Not only does he put them in the painting, he also kind of has them posed a certain way to kind of represent their philosophy or what they're known for. So we have some other people here. Pythagoreans, right? Pythagoras theory there, going through it, looking at a book, probably a math. You have Ptolemy, Euclid. We've talked about a little bit, and yeah, that's basically the painting. And again, the video will go in more detail, but it is pretty amazing. Definitely one of my favorites. So for Raphael, we just want to have down the School of Athens. Pope Leo, a Medici Pope. We talked about this yesterday with the popes. How far do we want to go here? We'll just end on this one. So Pope Leo X was a cardinal. Galileo de Medici and Luigi de Rosa by Raphael. Pope Leo is a Medici Pope. We talked about the Medici family yesterday. Basically, they were able to use their money and political influence to kind of establish or pick a pope, basically, and they ended up picking Pope Leo X. He went through the Vatican treasury in year. His extravagances offended even some cardinals as well as Martin Luther. Not Martin Luther King Jr., but we'll talk about that. And he started selling indulgences, and we'll talk about indulgences later on too. But it's basically a way for you to get out of going to hell, basically, if you believe in the Catholic religion is kind of the deal. So, all right, we'll leave you off there. I'm just kind of previewing some art pieces that'll come up a lot in our video tomorrow. So to recap, you want to have down in the categories. You should write this down so you can use it. Number one, Leonardo da Vinci. We looked at the Pieta, the Last Supper, and the Mona Lisa. For Michelangelo, it was the Pieta. It was the statue of David on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. And then our last guy, Raphael, and his painting of the School of Athens. So as long as you have that down, you're good to go. The video will fill in a lot of cracks. So I will talk to you guys tomorrow, and have a good day.